Welcome on back to another comic book flashback. I'm Marl the Cross 316, and we are looking at The Amazing Spider-Man, issue number 58. This issue came out in March of 1968, and as we look on the cover today, we have J. Jonah Jameson. It looks like he's in this robot suit of some sort. What's this all about? We're going to find out right here today as we continue our story here. We remember from last issue that Spider-Man had gone up against Kazar. In New York City, they fought each other. They were evenly matched, but Spider-Man fell unconscious as he plunged into this lake. And so now they have to see if Spider-Man can be revived. So that's exactly what we're going to find out here. Can Kazar revive Spider-Man? We're going to find all this out as today's title is To Kill a Spider-Man. So before we get started, go ahead and give this video a like and subscribe if you have not. And let's go ahead and get started. As always, this is brought to you by Stan Lee, who wrote this issue. We have John Romita and Donnie Heck doing the artwork. We have Mickey DeMeo doing the inking. And then we have Sam Rosen on the lettering page. So let's go ahead and continue our story here. We left off with issue number 57 with Kazar and Spider-Man fighting right here in New York City. So now Kazar is going to get out of the way of the police. The police have been alerted after Spider-Man and Kazar had been fighting each other. But it looks like Zabu, who is the saber-tooth tiger of Kazar, has been left behind. And so now we have a very worried police force wondering if this tiger is going to be a threat to New York and its citizens. But the only thing that's on the mind of Zabu is catching up and finding Kazar, who is his master. And so Kazar is going to bring Spider-Man on this rooftop. It looks like Spider-Man is coming to his senses. He is awakening from this huge fight with not only Kazar, but also this big storyline that we had just left with Dr. Octopus. And so now we see that Spider-Man is coming to his senses, and it looks like he is changed. His demeanor's changed. His voice has changed. We recall he was undergoing amnesia. He forgot who he was. He forgot his identity. But now we've learned that he is starting to recall things and how he fought Kazar, and Kazar reveals that Jameson is the one that set Kazar up to go after Spider-Man, as we recall way back in issue number 57. And so now we're going to see Spider-Man is going to start remembering himself. He's feeling very tired. He feels like he needs to go back to his apartment. But before we focus more on Spider-Man, let's get into the main part of our story, and that's dealing with J. Jonah Jameson. We know that J. Jonah Jameson hates Spider-Man, and he gets a phone call from Professor Smythe. And Professor Smythe, if you don't recall, he had aided Jameson back in issue number 25 with that Spider Slayer, but that did not work as Spider-Man was able to defeat that robot back in issue number 25. Well, it now seems that Dr. Smythe, or Professor Smythe rather, has created a more strong robot, and he's asking if Jameson wants to team up with him. Now, we also know that Jameson has a son, that's Colonel John Jameson, and Colonel John Jameson is going to leave. He's been sent out overseas. He wants to say goodbye to Jameson, J. Jonah Jameson, his father. So that's exactly where he's going to go. Now, we also remember that we also have a very ill Aunt May here, as she's been worrying about where Peter Parker is at. We also have Harry Osborn and Gwen Stacy worried as well as to where Peter Parker is. But thankfully, now we know that Peter Parker has left his amnesia state, and now he's starting to recall all the things that's been going on. So he levels with Kazar here, tells him the truth, and now we know that Kazar and Spider-Man are on the same page. Kazar hears a roar, and he notices that Zabu is out in the streets, tearing, just causing havoc here. So Kazar comes to the rescue. He takes the guns away from the police as the police are about to shoot Zabu. And so we just see some of the strength of Kazar here. He bends this entire lamppost on this cop car. And so now we see that Kazar and Zabu are going to leave the scene. And that's the last we'll see of Kazar and Zabu for quite some time. So now we see that Spider-Man is going to head back to his apartment. And we also see that Jameson is going along with Dr. Smythe, even though they had failed back in issue 25. Dr. Smythe shows him this giant robot, and Jameson is pretty impressed by it. And so Smythe says it's super strong, and it can sense Spider-Man just like that other robot. And there is just no way that they can fail this time. And so we see that Jameson and Dr. Smythe are going to team up together, and we see just a little bit of the strength as we've seen right here. So Jameson is all for it, and so it looks like Jameson and Dr. Smythe are going to use this robot to track down Spider-Man. And so we see that John Jameson comes by the Daily Bugle, but Jameson is not there, as we see that Jameson is with Dr. Smythe. But we see that John Jameson, being the good guy that he is being sent out with handshakes by none other than Joe Robertson. Now let's go ahead and get to our main story here. We have Spider-Man, as you know, has been up more than maybe 3 or 4 days with no sleep, and he's just feeling very exhausted here. He's going to head back to his apartment. Hopefully he won't run into Harry Osborn. And so we see that this robot is already being functioned by Jameson and Professor Smythe, and it's trying to locate Spider-Man. Spider-Man goes back to his apartment, changes to his civilian identity as Peter Parker. When he's about to take off all of his costume, he notices that he hears Jameson's voice outside of his window, so he hurriedly puts on his mask, and there we see that Jameson is he's controlling this robot. We can see right here that Jameson's face is in the view screen here, and we just see a little bit of the strength again of this robot, and he's going to be pretty much going after Spider-Man. So now we're going to see a cat and mouse chase pretty much, with Jameson controlling this robot as well as Professor Smythe. We see just a little bit of what's been going on here, but we also see that Jameson and Professor Smythe are not on the same page, as Professor Smythe pretty much says, "Get out of my way. I don't care if we're going to capture him or not. I want him to die." That's what Professor Smythe is all about. He wants pretty much to kill Spider-Man, but Jameson only wants to capture him, to put him in prison. But that's going to pretty much cause the downfall of this teamwork here, as Professor Smythe and Jameson are just not on the same page. And so Spider-Man again is trying his best to get out of the way of this robot, this spider slayer, and he has this pretty much this ray, this beam, and he's trying to avoid it. We see that Spider-Man causes this roof to collapse on the robot, but again, this robot is not going to stand down. Spider-Man goes to this phone booth. He's trying to figure out where Professor Smythe lives, and that's going to play a key role into this issue here, as Spider-Man finally finds out where Professor Smythe's lab is at. And so now we're going to see that, again, Spider-Man is going to try to go to Professor Smythe's lab. And so he finally enters into, it looks like, Professor Smythe's lab here. And Professor Smythe is like, "You know what? This is not going to help you, Spider-Man. This is going to lead to your downfall." But then we see all of a sudden that Professor Smythe's robot starts to malfunction here. Professor Smythe's like, "What the heck is going on here?" All of a sudden, we just see the robot just smash it. It just overloads. Come to find out that this overload of spider impulses was able to defeat Professor Smythe's Spider Slayer. And so, because of that, Spider-Man outthinked Professor Smythe once again, and we see another defeat with Professor Smythe and Jameson. And so now Jameson is telling Professor Smythe to get out of his office. He doesn't want to see him ever again. And so hopefully we won't see any more of Professor Smythe for quite some time. Peter Parker realizes that he can't get a hold of Aunt May. There's something must be wrong. And so he's going to go out, even though he's tired as heck, he's going to go out to find out where Aunt May is at. And then he runs right into Kazar and Zabu. And Kazar's like, I thought I had felt the aura of Spider-Man around here somewhere. It is a passing strange, just something stranger. I thought Spider-Man was around here. I could have sensed him. But of course we know that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. So that's how we end this issue here. Hope to see you next time as we prepare to meet the Brainwasher. We'll see all this in issue number 59. I hope to see you there. And until next time, keep reading comics.